Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Pedo.
so something. A couple of things, a couple of big things happened this week. Well, for one, Pat and I got to meet each other.
Right. I thought that's what you're supposed to do with weird chicks that you talk to on the internet. Correct me.
I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it.
Correct me
But
if I'm wrong, but
what was your if you could? Well, you said you were going to write me a Yelp review. What's your review?
did I?
You did,
Um,
yeah.
Take with lots of alcohol. No, it was a real good time. I think it went down absolutely perfectly. I don't think that I would have survived another hour in your presence. Um, we got we got pretty shitty, but I got to
We
see
did, yeah.
Dayton. The whole, I mean, it was the tail end of a week long vacation for me. So I
Sure.
was already kind of out of sorts, and I had spent about a week down south in the mountains, and Dayton is a beautiful city. It was nice to be back in the Midwest with flatlands and
Sure.
big asses, and it was just. Not you. I'm thinking about the people at the liquor store.
No, I
Um,
have no ass, so don't lie to these people.
I'm trying to sell you guys a false bill of goods, you know.
Right. I got all the titties, no ass.
But
That's true. We did see that really big ass at the liquor store.
oh yeah.
Um,
But no, it was a real good time. It was the perfect ending to a vacation, and yeah, you did not disappoint.
yeah, and we had talked about doing like all this stuff leading up to like, we're like, oh, when we get together, we're gonna do this, so we're gonna do that. We didn't do shit, guys. We sat around and drank. It was awesome.
Which yeah, I mean, like I would have been down to be productive, but I think, like I said, no complaints. Everything went exactly the way it was supposed to. I was so
Sure.
fucking hungover the next day that, like, because I think I left at like 12:30. It wasn't like terribly late.
No, it wasn't that
Um,
bad.
and
Yeah.
we didn't really start drinking until like 7:30. I don't even know what time I got. Like it was a good. It wasn't like a super long, like, bro down session, but I don't know if, like, it didn't need to go to 2 in the morning because I would have been fucking shit faced, even more than
Yeah.
I already was.
Was
And
right.
Saturday was pretty rough for me. So, like, especially being in a car for 5 hours and, like, nursing a hangover that whole time with three
Sure.
kids and
Yeah.
an irate spouse. So it was man, it was a good time. It was a real good time.
No, it was a lot of fun. I know a lot of people were excited to see it. But it's just, but there will be more in the future. It'll happen. Now it's my turn to go there, and
Right. Well, we're
it'll
actually
be
and I'm skipping ahead a little bit because I know we're going to get to it later in the show, but I think me and my kid are going to go do that ARC thing again, and over Labor Day weekend. So we'll see how everything turns out. But
you should pick me up if you do it.
yeah, we're trying. We're not officially planning it yet, but it's in like the discussion stages, and like we're looking at options and stuff. So
I want to. I mean, I'll probably end up getting. I don't know if they'll even let me in, but like
why wouldn't they?
because it's me.
You're on some
Have
kind
you
of
seen me?
watch list. Yeah, I have actually.
I'm
Now that
kind
you
of a
mention it, you
I'm
know.
kind of a godless heathen, and it's written all over my face and body, so they're gonna know.
Well, it'll be September by then. It's Labor Day. We'll put you in a long sleeve shirt. We'll get you some slacks, and you know, I don't know, figure it out.
Well, yeah, we'll figure it out. Well, we are definitely we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit, but but no, it was fun. It was a great time. How was your 4th of July? What did you do?
Not much. I mean, like, I have two dogs, so like, and usually we take I this is my first year having two dogs, so
Uh-huh.
usually I just have the one, and we normally go out to the country, to Indiana with the dog, and don't deal with like the fireworks and how fireworks affect dogs. Or maybe I have in the past, but I feel like this was the first year where I was like, oh my god, my dogs are fucking catatonic right now. So we got back to town on the third, and the third and the fourth was just dealing with that shit. Um, my dog's going nuts and stuff, and Yeah, I mean, we blew off a few. Having that said, of course, I blew off some fireworks of my own
Okay.
the night of the fourth, but didn't get too crazy. And drank a little bit the night of the fourth, but nothing. You know, after Friday night, I had kind of gotten a lot of it out of my system,
Sure.
so just kind of chilled out. Like I don't think we really did anything of note. Um, Oh, I saw that meme. Okay, here's another project that'll go absolutely nowhere that Pat's going to talk about. I saw that meme on I don't know if it was Facebook or Instagram or something. Someone was passing something around and it said like they should make Mamma Mia, but instead of and I reposted on Twitter, but yeah, make Mamma Mia, but instead of a bunch of Greeks at a wedding, it should be a bunch of witches in the woods, and
Yes.
it should be Fleetwood Mac songs instead of ABBA. And I thought it was a really good idea at the time. So maybe take into consideration what my mental state might have been. But I was like, this is fucking brilliant. So I, I spent part of the rest of the weekend like watching musicals and like taking notes as to what we should do and not do. Have you ever seen Sweeney Todd before?
Yeah.
So I watched that for the first time,
Okay.
and it works better as a horror movie. As a musical, it's kind of shitty.
Uh-huh.
There's no like really good songs there,
Yeah.
but it is interesting. I think it works better as a movie. Like I think if I saw that as a play like in the theater, I wouldn't be impressed unless it was a very like technically proficient production. But I guess as true theater people would say, I wasn't impressed by the book for it. The
Mhm.
songs and all that stuff was just kind of meh. Um, but I thought as far as like a horror musical goes, uh, concept and execution was pretty good. The music just fucking sucked, you know. But that's
Yeah,
what.
I'm not a big fan. Did you watch Repo, the genetic opera? I bet you didn't, did you?
I almost spit out my coffee. No, but it is on my list. I'm gonna
Oh
rewatch
my
like Hard Day's
god.
Night. I have a list of stuff I want to go through and watch. I haven't seen In the Heights yet, but I'm gonna go on kind of a musical binge this week.
Okay, well that needs to be the first one that you said. I promise you're gonna love it. Just watch it, please.
Okay, all right, all right, all right.
Well, I got really drunk on 4th of July, so that was cool.
Good for
Um,
you.
I did. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I did. And I really kind of sat down and thought about it, and I had realized that like I've been drunk for like pretty much every night the last week. I was like, oh shit, it's a lot of heavy drink. But it was my birthday week, so
Right.
I did the damn thing. It was my my 30th birthday, so we did a lot. I did a lot of stuff. But yeah, no, we had 4th of July. We did it over at Shane's house, and
Okay.
so where Shane's house is located, he's located right up the street from our local park that typically does the fireworks every year. So we kind of had our own personal show actually that lasted for about 30 minutes just from the guys and what they bought. And then we watched the Delco Park, which is where the fireworks are. We could see them from his house. So it was good. It was good stuff. And I got to see people, and that felt really good because I haven't really been very social lately, and
Yeah.
I needed it. So but it was fun. And then as people, I'm sure people want to know because they gave me their money to prevent this. I had court today. I did not go to jail. And that's all you really need to know about it. So thank you. Thanks a lot. But did you, Pat? Did you happen to hear the last week's episode that you weren't here on?
Of course I did. I listened to the show. This is one of my favorite podcasts, and with Kinsey on, it was a how could I miss?
Yeah,
So
yeah. It was good stuff. So
it was good.
obviously Kinsey got to, help me break the cherry, I guess, on the UAP report. But of course, I don't know if people want to hear maybe what you have to say about it, or how you felt about it.
I feel like it was. I mean, you'd have to go back and check the tape, but I feel like it's exactly what we said it was going to be. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
I think we prophesized it.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no mention of extraterrestrial anything. Um, it was left very ambiguous. It only looked at a fraction of the most recent cases. It didn't really. I don't. Did they? They didn't even really detail what era of or what cases they were drawing upon from. Right.
Well, I mean, that's a preliminary assessment. Allegedly, there's more to come. The individual, like we talked about last week, I'd mentioned that the Discovery hasn't come out yet. And the Discovery is the actual investigation of these things. Those files are still classified. They're not entitled to declassify those files. They don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So we might still, I mean, we might still get them. They might release them and just show that they're inconclusive, but we don't have details. I mean, they did note that, out of 144, 143 of these things are unexplained. So what does that mean exactly? What are they talking about exactly? What was it that they saw? What was it that they investigated that they couldn't account for?
Right.
So there's still a long ways to go. However, that's all we're going to get. I mean, they're still not going to admit to, they're not going to admit to extraterrestrials.
No, of course not. And there was no theorizing about occupants or point of origin or anything like that. Right. I did feel though, and that I feel like they did make kind of an allusion to point of origin as being not from this nation. Right. I felt like they kind of left the door open a little bit for it to be from a foreign government. That it was potentially terrestrial based.
They said foreign adversary, but that could mean, that just means things that we don't, that aren't ours. I mean, so it doesn't say whether it is or isn't.
Right. And I did find it interesting that I had no idea that, and I guess it makes it makes sense in the context of this investigation, that they were focusing primarily on incidents that happen in relation to military installations, which is from a standpoint of national security makes total fucking sense.
Right.
So they're not so much concerned with a sighting that somebody had driving down, I-75 or something. They're going to focus more on, airspace that was invaded. And
right.
That makes sense because you're going to have a more credible type of witness. You're going to have military, you're going to have air traffic controllers or people that are kind of in the industry, and you're going to have it documented better because you're going to have these places record their shit and they have better. Are you on Discord right now?
Discord's talking to me. I'm not on it, but I don't know how to turn it off. It makes noise. I'm sorry.
I love Discord. I love Discord and I love Clubhouse. Those are my two.
I'm not good at Discord. I'm really bad at it.
Discord is awesome if you're like putting together. So I was actually thinking about this today. Like if we pull the trigger on this witch musical, I was going to do everything via Discord server. It's really good for organizing files and material if you're working on like a group project. Like my D&D, my like vampire stuff is all done via Discord, right? Mm-hmm. Or my other streaming D&D game is all done via Discord. So it's very nerdy though.
Well, right, and that's basically that's why I've got Discord for the Clubhouse people, and then I also have it because I was on the which I don't know if you guys saw it, but I'll share it again. I was on the Bloody Bits horror podcast. I think it's what it's called, the Bloody Bits podcast. I don't even know what it's called, but I was on there. They have the show, they call it the Candace Files, and I was on there, and so they added me to the Discord because they want me to continue coming back. We talked about that Expedition X episode, so we riffed on it. It was a good time. You guys should listen to it. I'll drop it in the description. But
not to jump around too much, but there was a podcast where the people follow me on Twitter. I don't know who it is, so I'm not going to promote them because I don't know. But they were looking for people that had UFO stories to come on and talk. And after, because not only your encouragement, but after what you guys,
the Clubhouse.
No, and you and Kinsey talking about it last episode. I don't know. I think I might actually pull the trigger and do that.
Do it.
Because I think it would be good for our show.
Yes,
because it'll open it up to a whole different audience. Like, oh, you like me hearing this? If you like me talking about the story on this episode, you should listen to my show where I talk about shit like this all the time.
Yes, you should absolutely do it.
I don't want to necessarily position myself as somebody that's like,
oh my god,
I don't know, like
just do it.
Write a fucking book about it, I guess. Although I should write an ebook.
Do it.
No,
you could write a book about it if you want to. I mean, Travis Walton did.
I write books about everything else.
His story's bullshit. So
I write books about music to fuck to. Like I could write a book about this. I could write.
You could write a book about cryptids to fuck to.
Oh God, I don't. That,
Anyway, back on what we were talking about. I did have a little bit of an update regarding the UAP kind of situation.
okay.
um with that, a lot of people have been asking about, they've been so tied up in what, the US is doing. They didn't really know what was going on in the rest of the world. So the UK did come out and say that they did not plan a UAP report of any kind. They were not planning on releasing any of it. Mostly because the Minister of Defense was, stated that there's been no indication that there's an existence of any type of military threat to the UK from these things. Now, that could be because they've been throwing money at this already.
Throwing money at what?
At the UFOs.
Well, how do you, in what way? Like trying to buy them off?
No. They could already be taking it seriously and investigating it. So they could already have their own little group of people that are already investigating these things. So they don't feel the need to, because the main reason that the US is doing it is to basically announce that we are going to be putting money towards these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Is to justify budget expenditure, like we're gonna allocate, X number.
Like we're going to have a group, right? That's studying. That's why we have the task force doing it.
But that doesn't make. But think about it. Like, why? First of all, we've had that already. So why do they need a public one now? Because they need to justify spending the money. Is our budgetary oversight so much more intense now than it was a couple decades ago, to where we suddenly can't hide money anymore in the fucking budget?
Well, I think so, because if they're building all of these towers all over the place, like that guy we talked about, then yeah, people are going to start questioning what the hell it is. If they're beefing up their tracking system, then yeah, I think so. I think then you can't really hide it anymore.
Right. All right.
So I think it's getting to that point. Whereas, like I said, over at the UK, maybe they've already had these things in place and they've already made the story, and they're like, oh, that's just a weather balloon tracking system. I don't know what they got over there. I've never been over there, but but they did come out and say that, like I said, they weren't releasing any type of official report, which, we didn't have to either, but we did. So I wanted to, mention that. I also wanted to mention that a couple of days ago on Monday, a really big event happened, you guys. And Monday was X Day. No, do we remember, class, what X Day is?
Of course. Well, my favorite podcast guest.
It's yes. X Day happens every July 5th, 1998. And it is basically the end of the world day for the Church of the Subgenius folks, which is me also now. And anyway, they had they partied down in Florida. Our Reverend Crimson Nicholas, he was there. I'm sorry, our Doctor Reverend, I think he's a doctor now. I don't know what he is anymore. Time's a weird thing, so your titles are also my guy. But he went down and to celebrate the end of the world, to get his pleasure craft. And this year wasn't the year, but next year it'll be July 5th, 1998. So kudos to that. Make sure that you spend your $35 to get your eternal salvation, because that's important. But yeah, I haven't gotten my, I spent my $35. I haven't got my pleasure craft yet, but I know it's coming. I believe in Bob. So it'll happen, but
or maybe it was nothing. Okay. What's next?
It's July 5th, 1998. So I just have to wait for that day to happen, and then it'll be time. So I think I need to practice my Slack more. I think that's the problem. I don't have enough Slack. I need to do better at my Slack. And well, that's not true. I paid my $35, so I get my pleasure craft no matter what. You know what? I don't know how this works, really. I don't think any of us really do, and that's okay. So there's always next year. I really am hoping with enough planning next year, I actually will be able to make it to the festival. That's kind of the whole reason why I bought the membership, was just to be invited to this festival.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to go this year. Usually it's in Ohio every year. And, this year happened to be in fucking Florida. So I don't know. We'll see what happens next year. But yeah, that was of note. That was
and hopefully there's no pending litigations where you're,
Well, that's what I was saying. Everybody was like, I showed up to the 4th of July thing, and everybody's like, aren't you supposed to be with Red down at the thing? And I was like, Well, yeah, I'm like, and I thought about it, but it was like a lot of money for me to go down there and be the hottest person there. So I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see what happens. Next to Crimson Nicholas, of course, he's just the lady killer. But anyway, so that happened. What else happened? What else was nowhere? That's all my news. I don't have any other news
I
related.
want to talk about the Gulf of Mexico fire
Yes, please go ahead.
because that was going on while we were getting drunk on your couch, and I think I had noticed it on my phone throughout the day, and just thought I don't know what the fuck I thought it was, but I'm sure by now people are pretty familiar with it. Um, yeah, it was a let me get the exact Pemex, which is a Mexico state-owned oil company, said that there was a gas leak in one of the platforms, and it caused like that giant, like it looks like the Eye of Mordor, uh, in the Gulf of Mexico, and basically burned for most of Friday morning, and they put it out. It might have been it was 5 or 6 hours or whatever, but was super crazy. And the video, there's video of it all over YouTube. And like I'm saying, most people have probably seen it by now. But if you haven't, check it out because it looks very unreal. And that was part of the reason why I think if I came across it in my news feed on Friday, I probably just disregarded it and kept going because I didn't think it was a real story, and it ended up being a real story. So very interesting that that's the same place, kind of, if everyone remembers the Deep Horizon, that oil leak that happened a couple of years ago, where I don't know how long the oil leaked into the ocean for before they finally were able to cap it off.
That was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, that was pretty. I mean, yeah, I remember that. I don't. I guess I don't. I mean, it looks cool, I guess, but it's horrible that that's happening. I don't. But I guess I don't understand the appeal.
Of
I
what?
don't know. It's just so weird to me that stuff like that blows up. Doesn't stuff like that happen all the time?
It's happening more and more. And what I think is interesting is that, you know, so much when we talk about like pollution and when we talk about renewable resources and trying to give our planet like an extended life and not destroy this place as quickly as fucking possible. It's the impetus is always put on the common person to recycle and to make greener choices. And I'm somebody who,
Sure.
environmental sustainability is a part of like what I do for a living. And it's something that I went back to school for later on in life. So like I understand that like, there's a lot of pressure being put on companies and individuals to make different choices and use LED light bulbs instead of CFLs and all this shit. And it's just crazy to me that like of all the responsibility that's put on the common person to recycle and reuse and make greener choices, then you have shit like this happen.
Yeah.
that like
Right.
is there it's a fucking bona fide environmental calamity, and people are just
Yeah.
like, well, whatever, you know. And that to me is like, I don't need to ever recycle in my whole entire life, like, and I won't do nearly the amount of damage that was done in 5 hours on Friday morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we're kind of not being given a choice as to whether or not we keep this planet habitable,
Right.
because it's being decided by much larger, bigger organizations. Like this whole the Pemex, the company that was responsible for this. Like I said, it's Mexico's state-owned oil company, and they tweeted that the incident did not generate any type of spill, which is
Right.
like ridiculous because
Like the ocean doesn't just catch on fire. Like the ocean's wet.
well, yes, and like for if you think about how much fuel, so okay, we know how fires start, right? You need combustion, you need fuel, you need oxygen, and you need an igniter, and that's how fire fucking exists. Okay,
Right.
so for fire, the fire to be that intense that it evaporates the water around it to let that fire continue like that, like that's a massive amount of fuel that's being
Right.
dumped into the ocean. And honestly, the only thing, and this is me knowing absolutely nothing about what they were pumping or how it was being transported, anything like that, just looking at the eye of that like fire whirlpool, hopefully that was the majority of the leak being burned off, right? Like I can't imagine like for that flame to be that intense that it sustained itself in a body of a limitless body of water. Um,
Right.
it was burning an insane amount of fuel. I can't imagine that unless the leak was absolutely enormous to where there was excess fuel on top of that. I would think that everything from the leak was being combusted like that. I don't know though. That's just me.
Well, right. I mean, because you got to, I mean, it's not like it was a fire that was on land that spread to like some leakage. And it was right in the middle of the fucking, well, not in the middle of the ocean, but right in the middle, of water. It was
Right.
water surrounding it. It wasn't like it was attached to anything. It's just no possible way that it happened the way these people are trying to say it happened. They're just trying to not be held accountable. And so,
Right. And who's going to hold
yeah.
them accountable? Is it going to be another government? Is it going to be the UN? I mean, the EPA? I mean, well, the EPA wouldn't even have jurisdiction there because this is Mexico. So who knows? I mean,
That's a good question. Yeah. That's
I
about
mean,
right.
I remember when the Fukushima stuff was happening. That happened when I was on Midnights, and Coast to Coast would do like almost weekly updates. And it seemed like for 2 years, it was like, well, we're still leaking radioactive material into the fucking Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Like that went on like forever, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, who knows what kind of destructive impact that's having on the environment? And if anyone does know, they're probably not going to fucking tell you, you
Right.
know. And that's why, I mean, I hate to bring it back to the UAP stuff, but my theory has always been that these are terrestrial crafts and that there's some kind of off-world program going on, or secret space program. And just when you look at like just environmental devastation like this, for me, I gotta, at least a part of me has to think like, dude, they don't give a fuck.
No.
They are almost tripping over themselves trying to destroy the environment as quickly as fucking possible
Well, and
and leave this planet inhabitable.
it's the same concept of all these companies that celebrate Pride Month, but then like will discriminate against gay people outside of Pride.
Right.
It's just it's just smoke and mirrors. That's all it is. So it's like us as individuals, we're trying very hard. And are there genuine companies out there that do care about the environment? Sure, I'm sure there are, but most of them don't because they have more money. Like they don't care because they have all this money and that's what they care about and that's all
Well,
that
it's just
matters.
not their priority. Like their
Right.
priority as a business is to be a fucking business and to make money. And at some
Right.
point, either in your manufacturing or in anything, like you're going to do
Right.
something that's harming the environment. But I
Right.
think that's one of those things where, like, as Midwestern children of a earlier like simpler times, I guess, or whatever. We're used to hearing that things are bad for you, and then they walk it back, and it was like, or I was driven around by adults that smoke cigarettes and didn't put
Sure.
kids in seatbelts, and that was perfectly commonplace for most of my adult life. And now it seems like fucking weird, but it's not, you know. Or people that like, there's that picture of like an '80s birthday party, and like the kid's like blowing his candles out, and there's an ashtray right in front of him, you know. And it's like he's
Right.
blowing the ashes out of his birthday cake,
Yeah.
and that was just the way that we lived back in the day. So that, I think what's in vogue for like being environmentally conscious, that bar changes a lot.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
I think every company is probably responsible for a little bit of
Destruction.
yeah, but
Yeah.
then you see
Little
this
death and destruction.
shit like this is definitely next level. So I wanted to bring
And
up that.
yeah, and then you want to talk about that
The
building
Florida,
collapse.
yeah, the Florida apartment collapse,
Yeah.
which the death toll went up today again to like 32, with still
Wow.
like over 100 people missing. They're not going to find those fucking people, so like it's going to be everyone in there's dead. Um, but yeah, so on the morning of June 24th, uh, this fucking 12-story apartment building collapsed in Florida, Miami, Florida. I'm sure you've heard about it by now. And they still don't know exactly why it collapsed. There's a couple theories, and one theory is that there was structural issues that were specific to that building.
Sure. Which
Um,
is it's a pretty new building, right? I mean, I don't remember exactly when it was built, but that's what I remember reading is that they're shocked because it's so new.
Right.
That it
I,
had to have been an engineering fault to begin with for it to have collapsed like this.
yeah, I'm not seeing the date. It's a it's well 40 years old, which I guess isn't too bad. 1980, like that's
That's pretty new.
yeah, that's relatively new in the grand scheme of things.
I mean,
Uh,
considering, but I obviously have my own. I'm curious. I'm curious about. You know, uh, I'm scared to say because I don't want to start getting false reports.
huh.
But I'm wondering if there haven't been some Mothman sightings in the area.
Mm.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I
I
think
know.
my theory is that Florida is sinking into the ocean, and that's just what did it.
No, that's California.
Well, Florida too.
Florida might be too. No, the closest report that I've gotten, I don't know if I have any in Florida. I'm gonna have to look, but I don't think
Yeah.
so. But I had a recent one within the last couple months that happened in Atlanta, Georgia. So of
Okay.
course I'm curious, but again now I'm weary because who knows if people are going to start reporting. Oh yeah, I did. I live in Florida and I saw Mothman, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
Dude, if we have that many listeners where we can like generate like the cracks alone, the crackpot listeners alone are enough to generate a bullshit flap, like I would be more impressed than anything. So
we might. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
well, okay.
you want
Listen,
to talk about
listeners,
grassroots effort here? Like, sure.
go out there and spread your Mothman propaganda.
All
Go tell
right.
everybody that he collapsed it because you saw him, and say that you're from Florida. Let's see how far we can take this. Um, just
So,
because.
circling back to being in the Smoky Mountains last week, like I wasn't down there to hunt for cryptids in any stretch of the imagination, but
Sure.
we were definitely in an area where there's been sightings and disappearances and stuff in the past,
Right.
and nothing happened. So I don't know what that proves, but
I mean, nothing. You weren't there long enough to know.
I guess.
you
Yeah.
were in a cabin. You weren't. Trust me. Trust me. These things are deep. They're deep in there. They're not hanging out on the side of the road like people think they are. Maybe sometimes in passing, but that's about it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that the problem is that I was, familiar with all those like missing 411 stories,
Sure.
and that going into those areas, it's always like, yeah, broad daylight, someone turned their back for a second, and then someone, in their party disappeared or whatever, and I think that was my primary concern because I had 3 kids with me. I had, it was myself, my wife, and we had, 3 kids that were under the
Well,
age
sure.
of 12. So
Sure.
it's like, fuck, I don't want one of these things to get captured by Bigfoot.
Yeah. In
Uh,
all fairness, I haven't really dug too much into the missing 411 stuff. Um, but I can tell you this. It's fucking dangerous to be in the woods, period.
yeah, it is.
It's fucking dangerous, right? And not just, I mean, not because of Bigfoot or whatever, just because it is. Like it's like nature is trying to fucking kill you. So I don't know. And now again, this is coming from somebody who knows pretty much nothing about it except for what other people have told me about it. But right now I'm definitely skeptical that it has anything to do with portals and and Bigfoot, or and even then, like, that's what I hear is that the missing 411 is just simply that it's caused by cryptids, not, and then there's theories as to why and whatnot, so it goes deeper and deeper. So um but I don't really, just in general, yeah, people go, just like we were talking about, just boats just go fucking missing in the ocean. People just go fucking missing all the time for any reason whatsoever, whether it be the ocean or the forest. You're not safe anywhere, guys.
Yeah, and the mountains, like if we're Midwesterners, right? So we're used to a
Hills,
certain type of geography. Yeah.
sure,
And like, you can be from Dayton, or you could be from Indiana, or you could be from Chicago. You're used to the same trees, the
right.
same type of land, flat for the most part. You
Mm-hmm.
know, all of that stuff is the same. But if you go, you don't even have to go that far, but if you do go outside, kind of like uh your biome, I guess you'd say, and think it gets very disorientating. That was when I first went to Los Angeles with my band. This was like 15 years ago, but like that was the first thing that struck me, is that it's completely different flora and fauna. The
Yeah,
birds are different, the trees are different, the fucking bushes are different. It's a whole entire different ecosystem. And you can go from Chicago to Wisconsin to Ohio to Pennsylvania and see pretty much the same shit.
right.
But when you go down to Tennessee, it's different. You're in
Right.
mountains now, and there's gigantic tree roots that come out of the ground all over the fucking place, and like we, not only did we go hiking in the Smoky Mountains, but we took a river raft tour. It was like being in Vietnam. You know what I mean? Like probably because when they shot those, I was actually, we rafted down the same river where they shot Deliverance. But like when you think,
Oh,
yeah, I know, I did not get laid though, unfortunately.
sexy. You didn't get laid.
I did not get
I
my
don't know
ship.
if I would call it getting laid, Pat, but
Well, it depends. Who do you think you think I'm Ned Beatty, or do you think I'm the mountain man? It
well,
depends.
that's true. You did show up with your Peg Boy shirt on, so let's.
Do you get that reference? That's crazy. Because that's like my favorite Chicago punk band, but that's what that
No.
refers to, like as far as like pirates and stuff goes.
I don't think anybody saw that shirt, Pat, and thought about maybe butt pirates, but I don't think they thought about anything else. I didn't know that was a band.
Get out of here. That's so regional. That's crazy. I wore that to the Ark too.
Did you really?
Yes, there's a picture of me in front of a giant cross wearing my Pegboy shirt.
No, I know what I was thinking of when I saw your shirt, but maybe I'm the weirdo. I don't
No,
know.
well, it depends because like here's the thing about like that band. So like that band is like super famous in Chicago. They're like the second most famous Chicago punk band of all time, and that's because it's ex members of the first famous. They're ex members of Naked Raygun. They formed Pegboy, and I won't get into which one I prefer more, but that's the shirt that you saw me wearing.
Sure.
But so like Pegboy was just like the name of like the Chicago punk band, and that's all it was for the longest time. And then finally, I was like, "What Pegboy means?" And I looked it up, and it was like pirates used to. They used to also call them cabin boys, but they would take like a young sailor or someone that they would kidnap, and they would basically make him sit on a chair with like a peg on it, and they would sit there, and that way that they were like it was like a butt plug, and that way they could be easily cajoled whenever the mood struck them,
Okay. All
which
right.
is that's what Pegway refers to. And I was just like, oh my god, like that's this band that I've been listening to for like 10 years. Like
No, I
this
think
is
that's great. No, I think that's wonderful. I really do. But no, I know what you're saying. I mean, because I go down to, the Appalachia all the time to, that's most of my investigation actually is in, the West Virginia Appalachian Mountains. And it is very different. It's scary because you're so out of your element. You're like, what is this? And in Ohio, it's pretty hilly here. I mean, I wouldn't say that we don't have actual part of Appalachia is in Ohio. I wouldn't say we have actual mountains though. It's more hills.
yeah, you have that Snake Mound in the southeastern part, which I want to check out
Oh,
sometime
we have a
too.
lot of amazing stuff in Ohio. We really do. I
Yeah,
really, I like Ohio. Being somebody that's been other places, I do. I enjoy it here. Just because there's so much to do and see and observe and but we have, more hills and stuff, but then you go out to the actual mountains and you're like, oh, this
right.
is not just that, even just driving through the mountains is different because it's hard. It's especially when you're not used to it. I get
It's like being on a fucking
terrible.
roller coaster. I hated it. It was
Yeah.
my least
Well,
favorite part of the week was.
and your equilibrium's all fucked up.
Oh
You're
yeah,
like,
your ears pop.
oh, oh
Seriously.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. The ones that when I was down in Arkansas, and there's I mean it's all mountains there. Um, that's how it was. My ears ended up getting really full, and I couldn't like alleviate it. Like it just couldn't because the house that I was staying at was like literally in a mountain, so it wasn't going to get any better.
Right.
So whereas like those people, they live that life every day and, they're used to it. And plus, just the culture in itself, there's definitely some type of, a different culture everywhere you go is a different culture. But it is intimidating because it's like here in Ohio, you go so far out and like, at some point you're going to hit city and it's not necessarily like that in the mountains. You're just going to
No.
keep going higher and higher. You're like, oh
Right.
shit, I got to turn back down and go back down the mountain in order to get anywhere. So it's like you get further and further away. You're never just going to keep going straight and hit that point.
God, we got turned around leaving something one day, and we went all the way up to the top of this fucking mountain, and it was like The view was great, but I didn't even want to look at it. I just wanted to like get me fucking down from here. Like
Yeah,
this is not
yeah,
fucking safe. Like get me fucking down from here.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
You panic. You're like, well, and even like in a car, if you take a wrong turn, you can't just like, we got mostly flat ground here. You just roll up in the grass and turn around. You can't do that shit on a mountain.
Right. Well, that's the thing is that even if like even if you're not talking about like falling down like hundreds of feet and like destroying your car and killing yourself, most roads are still kind of like like raised like 4 feet up. You know what I mean? Where they're like there's at least a little bit of a drop off on the side,
Yeah,
so you're not going to die, but you might fuck up your
right.
axle or
It's a
something.
ditch.
Yeah, exactly. So
Well, right.
even
You're
if
gonna
it's
fall in that ditch, and
survivable,
that's, I mean,
yeah.
it's terrible. Or you can like try to like because we did that shit in West Virginia. I mean, we were stuck on the shitty ass dirt road. There was nowhere to turn around. We ended up having to drive in reverse for about a quarter mile to go find a patch of flat land where we could turn around at.
Oh my god.
Because you can't just do it. And it's scary because then like the car wasn't going to make it any further up that road. I don't even know how it made it that far up that road. It was so bad.
I would have
And
just
it's just
I would
out
have
in
just
life.
lived there. I would have been like, this is where we live now.
No, we were not about to stop at this particular. It was so fucking weird there. No.
Yeah.
So it is intimidating. But why don't we go ahead and get into the show topic a little bit more and talk about so you went somewhere before you came here, somewhere that I told you about. You probably knew about before, I think. But we had talked about it before. You went to the
Yeah, the ARC project. I don't, you know what? I might have heard about it for the first time from you. I really don't know. Or it's called the ARC Encounter. Um,
I think
I,
it's kind of a popular thing. I mean, it's a giant building shaped like the Ark, Noah's Ark.
right.
So
Well, I know I had. It's a. It's technically its official name is a Young Earth Creationist theme park. But yeah, no, it it was something that was kind of new on my radar, and when we realized that we would be kind of passing by it on the way from uh, Tennessee to Ohio, I wanted to make sure that we went there. And we did, and it was a fucking eye-opening experience. And I know me and you talked about this when we were hanging out on Friday, but for the benefit of our listeners, like first of all, you got to understand, like this is a theme park that is in the process of being built, and this thing is only going to get bigger. Okay, so right now it's just pretty much got the Ark, and there's like a little zoo, and there's a 3D theater, but they're like actively now like building the Tower of Babel attraction, right? So imagine like the first year or two that like Disney was opened, and they had like maybe Thunder Mountain and the Haunted Mansion,
right,
but that was it, right? But then the next year they put in Peter Pan, and then the next year they put in Space Mountain and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and then before you know it, you got fucking Disneyland. So it's kind of like the same thing. We're like
right.
we are in the beginning stages of an entire enormous Young Earth Creationist theme park, and I was glad I got in on the ground floor. Because
Right.
we are going back in Labor Day, hopefully. It was pretty fucking insane. So like what's interesting, why I kind of wanted to talk about this is because it talks about it checks the box to some of our previous topics where like we had talked about creationism and young earth theory and dinosaurs and the incomplete fossil records and stuff like that, and all of this um, builds off that, right? So most people are kind of familiar with the story of Noah and the ark, and God was displeased with the state of the planet, and commanded Noah and his family to build this ark. Once they were inside the ark, they brought two of every animal. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Then it stopped, and then Moses spent another 40 days or whatever floating around, and then the waters receded, and Earth as we know it today was kind of left behind. They all left the ark and began to repopulate the earth. So that's kind of a fairly common story. Most people, even if you're not a hardcore religious Christian, it's one of the few Bible stories that most people know. And this whole entire Ark Encounter experience kind of moves forward with the assumption that that's a historical event that happened. It happened 4,000 years ago, and that they build a argument for it being historically accurate as represented in the Bible. They make the claim that, or like if you're familiar with like Pangea, the supercontinent, that was the state of the Earth before the flood. What happened was that large fissures opened up on the ocean floor and released lava into the ocean. And when the fissures opened up, it created massive earthquakes that then in turn created tsunamis. And that flooded the lands. And then with the lava being emptied out into the ocean floor, that superheated the ocean water. Kind of what we saw on Friday with the fucking oils, with the shit in the Gulf of Mexico. But it vaporized so much ocean water that it created a whole bunch of, moisture up into the atmosphere, which created this torrential downpour that lasted 40 days and 40 nights. So that's what the whole thing proposes actually happened, and that it makes a lot of interesting claims along the way. Lots of interesting claims along the way, which I don't even know where to begin.
Okay, that's fine.
One of the things when you go through the ark is that it's got it's built to the specifications that are outlined in the Bible, the dimensions of it, and they have lots of areas, obviously, because the main purpose of the ark was to shelter different animal species to be saved. So they have like all these like pen areas built up all over the place, and you have they're not, obviously there's not animals in there, but they're like ceramic or whatever, just like kind of display animals,
right?
And you'll have like hippopotamuses next to like T-Rexes, baby T-Rexes, obviously, because they make the case that dinosaurs existed at the same time that man did, and that they brought the infant versions of the animals on the ark with them because they would be easier to domesticate and tame. They would shit less and eat less. And then when they were released from the ark, they would have a longer life ahead of them to procreate and repopulate. So, so like that was like super crazy to see. And then it just, oh God, I don't even know where to go. It was like, it was great because this is something that, like, we've talked about, we know it's out there, and to see it kind of like all laid out was a really eye-opening experience. And it kind of brings you back to the flood myth, which is something that is fairly common in human history. There's over 200 different cultures that have a flood myth.
Right.
And, I did an episode, the podcast I used to do way back in the day, I had an archaeologist on once that I interviewed, and I had asked her point blank if she thought that, and it wasn't the whole reason I had her on, but when we were talking about archaeology stuff, we got on different topics of like ancient civilizations, and I said, what's your opinion of a flood myth? I'm like, of there being a great flood at some point in mankind's history. There's all these different civilizations. They all had flood myths. They're all very similar. And her response to that, to me at the time, which I don't necessarily buy, but I think it's worth bringing up in the context of this show, was that most early civilizations were water-based, right? It was a place you needed water to drink. You could fish in the water. You could build a boat and then kind of travel up and downstream. And it only made sense that if most early civilizations were formed around bodies of water, that eventually those bodies of water would flood. And, either there'd be a heavy rainfall in the mountains and there'd be a flash flood down the river, or, there'd be a tsunami or whatever off the coast of Washington State, that these things happened. And given, the reason that every major civilization has a flood myth is because every major civilization basically was started up around the water,
Right.
And, but she did not feel that there was one precise, definitive great flood that had happened in mankind's history. She didn't believe that. She just thought that there was just a common thing that happened to early civilizations.
Well, and I agree with that. And because of their limited travel and just, the world doesn't really exist outside of their own little areas, then if they were hit with this natural disaster of any kind, then the story gets twisted and they don't really know how to explain it, so they choose to explain it away with religion. Kind of like the same views that we kind of came to about the Wendigo and how it's just kind of circumstantial and an easy way to explain
Why
things
people
that they
go
couldn't
crazy? Yeah.
explain. Right. I think that, as of right now in our science and point in time, there's absolutely 100% zero evidence of any type of flood happening globally.
That's such a bummer, though.
Absolutely no evidence of it.
Really? That's what you think?
It's not what I think. It's science. I was looking at it. That's what the scientists think. And so therefore, yeah, I don't. It doesn't make any sense why we would have it. Just there's no logic behind it at all. Um, it just simply didn't happen. It just didn't happen. Now, it could advances be made in the future to point to that maybe it did, sure, but I don't know. I think that we know a lot about our planet. I think at this point in our evolutionary timeline, we would know. I think we would have evidence, but there's nothing. There's nothing that supports that it ever did happen. Now, again, um, it could have. There could have been, big floods that did happen, or tsunamis, or not even that. I'll tell you, one particular thing that I think about a lot from time to time, a lot is when I was a kid and I was watching an episode of Bill Nye the Science Guy,
Hmm.
and he was talking about water. That's what the episode was about. And the opener of the episode, he had mentioned how water is recyclable, right? We really have kind of a finite source of water. We don't really create new water. We
Hmm.
just have the set amount of water, and it comes and goes, in our atmosphere and in our daily lives and whatnot. And because I remember he had mentioned that if you drink a glass of water, you're potentially drinking dinosaur spit at some point because it's recycled back in the environment, right? So I remember that, and that is how water works. So like in order to flood the entire planet, you would have to have a
Right.
means of generating new water, and we just haven't. There's nothing like that exists, and it hasn't. So you're telling me that for recorded history, and I would say recorded history, even though it goes back further, I would say we have a really good idea of like the last 500 years, what's been going on. Nothing like that has happened in the last 500 years, So why is it not happening now? I mean, especially everybody talks about how like I'm going to get into religion a little bit. All these Christians talk about how it's the end times and, the world is so bad and, we're coming to it, we're coming to it, we're coming to it. Well, I've never been talked to by a fucking bush before. You know what I mean? Like that shit's not happening now. So, and we're not having great floods. We're not having these crazy things that the Bible talks about. So like why would that, full pun intended here, why would that theory hold water and then like the other ones don't, and vice versa? Like none of it really makes any sense. And that's just kind of what I say with everybody. When you're thinking about anything at all, you have to make it make sense. And this is just one of those things that doesn't. There's not even like a maybe in there. I really tried to research this, and I tried to look for evidence supporting that there could have been, because there's some people that claim that they found pieces of Noah's Ark and this, that, and the other, but then it never goes anywhere. It's never anything. And, again, just geographically, there's nothing supporting that there was ever a flood.
Yeah, I know. I think I just like the idea of it. I mean,
I tried. No, it's okay. I mean, no, it is. You know what? But I do still see it. I think it's important to talk about. Um, if anybody's listening to the show and you guys have any type of argument for this to be a thing, like I am more than happy to listen to the evidence.
well,
Maybe you saw something that I didn't. I mean, if your evidence is just simply that you would like to believe it, that's one thing. But I mean, like, I need like some scientific evidence. So if you have some, please bring it to my attention. I'd love to see it.
nobody listening to this show has any type of fucking peer researched scientific evidence. So it's fucking
They might.
we'll end
They
that
might.
conversation before it starts. But I think the so what was interesting about the Ark Encounter was that you get to see all the arguments to all the stuff that you kind of just laid out, right?
Right.
And one of the arguments to where the water go is the polar fucking ice caps, right? So like if, and I understand people kind of, the one analogy, kind of like when you're talking to flat earthers, how like they
Mhm.
make these like weird claims about like, well, if you're on an airplane and you look at this, then blah, blah, blah. And you're like, all right, but you're forgetting some part of it. Like you're making
Right.
like 2/3 of an argument that sounds good, but you're forgetting that other third. And like,
Yeah.
I think when people talk about, um, like, the polar ice caps melting isn't going to raise the sea level, even though we clearly see that happening in places like Florida, right?
Right.
um, but what they say is, well, like, okay, like, take a cup of water and put some ice cubes in there, right? And then let the ice cubes melt. Does the cup of water overflow? No, because the water is already displaced by the ice cubes. So therefore, if the polar ice caps melt, the sea levels aren't going to rise because the ice caps are already in the water, right? So
Yeah.
that's the argument that people have against, against there being like that we have to worry about sea levels rising. And obviously, number one, we know the sea levels are rising, and number two, the reason being is because a lot of the polar ice caps aren't necessarily just on water. A lot of the glaciers, a lot of that stuff do have a base underneath them,
Correct.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
so that liquid is kind of being suspended outside of the ocean, but as it melts and it goes in, then it's pushing it down and it's raising things back up again.
Right.
So that's why when you talk about ocean levels shifting in relation to, um like, how could that much water be produced that would cover all the dry land, their explanation is that it's because all of the ice cap stuff was there. And when you talk about where did it all go for the waters to recede and for the dry land to form, it's because almost immediately following the Great Flood was the only ice age. So if you look at like what conventional science tells you is that there were several ice ages over the planet's history.
Right.
And what they claim is that no, there was just one that happened, and that was when, that was caused by global cooling because everything was underwater, so obviously it wasn't fucking warm. And you had the ice caps and all that stuff forming on. Not saying that they're right, you're wrong. I'm saying that's the argument.
No, that's okay. No, that's totally fine. And I get what you're saying. Now, one of the big reasons why we had talked about doing this show was to kind of talk about the Nephilim a little bit.
Right, which is something that I was like totally blown away about because the as someone who's read the Bible a lot of times, one of the things that I know is in there, and I know was the cause given for the flood, was that God was displeased with the fact that angels had come down and mated with the women of men, the daughters of men, and created these giants, the Nephilim, these, like, abominations, and that the flood was kind of primarily to wipe them out.
Right. Right.
And that was not mentioned anywhere,
Period. Right. Which is weird.
anywhere in the Ark Encounter. There was one, and I'll send you pictures of all. I'm going to send you all these pictures tonight, and then if you want to incorporate any of them into like the promo for this episode, you totally can. But there was one thing when it was like documenting like pre-Earth or pre-flood Earth and why it was so like corrupt and stuff. And there was this amazing diorama of like a coliseum with giants fighting dinosaurs and like people like cowering and crying while like Roman emperors like drank wine with like many wives and watched. And so they acknowledged giants in the context of that. They showed giants as like but being very human, just like big ass people, right? And fighting the just like being used as like gladiators and stuff. So it kind of sideway acknowledges the giants. It doesn't give them context as to where they came from. But what's interesting about that is that um, part of and this is something that you talked about with the cryptic community, where a lot of really hardline Christians don't believe that the Nephilim could exist because they were supposed to be wiped out by the flood. And
Right.
when we were talking about this, the first thing that I immediately pointed out was that the story of David and Goliath is something that happens generations after the Noah's flood. So obviously, and there's way more like references to giants and like the Bible and stuff. And they kind of like allude that they come from Asia when you're talking about they're from the East, but like
I decided to look into this a little bit more, and this is kind of, what I was getting at with this segue was that, see, I'm already, I'll be dead honest with you. In the background, one of my friends is streaming. So on my TV, I'll keep the stream on and it's off, but like I can see the chat go by and I look over and somebody is in the chat talking about Nephilim. And this is a cryptid stream. Like,
right.
so it's crazy, but that wasn't my point. So my point was I was doing some research on this a little bit more, because you had mentioned the giants thing, because we had talked about David and Goliath and how that happened after the flood and how, Goliath was allegedly a Nephilim. And so it's like, well, then obviously God felt, well, okay, here's the thing. Giants and Nephilim aren't the same thing.
Okay.
They're not the same. And so that was the argument that was used in all this, because I was looking up, if Nephilim, and this was like from like weird websites like BibleTruth.org and shit. And so I don't know if that's real or not, but like it was from like Christian websites because I wanted to see their explanation for it. If allegedly, again, which I've said, if the flood was made to wipe out the Nephilim, and it was, and God did his job and wiped out the Nephilim, by implying that there's Nephilim that exist today, then you're implying that God failed. Therefore, you're committing blasphemy, which is the only unforgivable sin in the Bible. Everything else is fine. You cannot be blasphemous at all. And so I wanted to see the logic. So their logic was saying that, well, Nephilim are not the same thing as giants. They're two different things.
Yeah, but that's not, okay. And what are they basing that on?
Different, I guess I didn't write it down, but different parts of the Bible that say like different scripture.
Well, so a lot of what a lot of this comes down to is different translations, and me and my son were talking about this. Is that there is no the Bible as it was originally written in its original language. We have no access to that. That doesn't exist.
Right.
What we have are Greek translations of it that survived, like the Library of Alexandria and stuff, and like then the Greek translations that were translated into different languages and stuff. It's like it all depends
an ancient version of telephone.
Right, exactly. That's exactly how my son fucking paraphrased it too.
It is.
Was using the telephone game thing, yeah. So different people can pull out whatever translation kind of best suits their whatever they're trying to prove and say, oh, but it says this, oh, but it says that. And like I'm sorry, as somebody who's and I'm not if these people want to fucking come on the show and debate me, they can.
Sure.
But I think that like it's the same fucking thing. All right. It's the same fucking thing. You give me an alternate explanation for that the Bible gives as far as the existence of giants goes, and I would love to hear it. I would love to hear what they say it is. You want to get into fucking semantics about the word Nephilim, fine. All right. But then you tell me where, if you don't think that they're the same thing, then give me your explanation for where giants came from.
Well, because right. That's what I'm saying is that, just like you were explaining how at the Ark Encounter, it's very much like flat earth logic, right? Which is just like science that you can see and just kind of barely grasp, but nobody really digs into to figure out why. And that's kind of what this explanation felt like, was they were like, well, the reason why is because the giants weren't Nephilim. They were different. It's like, but no, hold on. But then what were the giants? Like, you have to, you got to explain this stuff. And then they're like, oh, trust God. And it's like, well, I'm trying to, but like, give me something to work with here. God doesn't make much sense.
Give me some level of consistency. Well, that's the thing, is that like it all comes through the filter of man, and man isn't fallible. So, or fallible, I'm sorry. So if you want to talk about the infallibility of God, it's like, okay, but once that message is being put through human ears and written down by human hands, who fucking knows what happens to it, right?
Yeah.
And then you talk about things like the Council of Nicaea, where like basically and there's different translations of the same Bible, but the cornerstone Bible that we all kind of draw from, a group got together in like the Middle Ages and sat down and it had all the different books and decided like, okay, these are the ones we're going to keep and these are the ones we're going to toss, right? And
Right.
there was a bunch of stuff that was considered that's when they decided what was canon.
Right.
Right? It's like the Star Wars universe when they
Yeah.
decided, like, well, this extended universe shit from the books from the '90s, we're going to throw this out, but we'll keep Admiral Thrawn, and you know what I mean. But like, as far as like Han and Leia having twins, we'll throw that shit out. We'll throw out Mara Jade, but we'll keep some stuff in. And it's just like it's like when you're retconning like a fucking a movie, I guess, like the Saw fucking series or something, or you're gonna redo the Halloween movies but start act like nothing happened after part 2, or you know what I mean. It's like that shit.
Yeah.
And like that's exactly what they did with the fucking Bible. Is they sat down at some point and they said, okay, we have 50 of these books, and we only really, first of all, it's too unwieldy. We need to cut it down to 35. And we need to make sure that they're all coherent and cohesive and tell a semi, like, straightforward narrative, because there was contradictions all over the place. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And that's it. Like, the one that I kind of I listen to daily now talks up, mentions all the time that, like, Jesus had siblings. And that was something that I remember in grammar school. That's what made me start questioning religion a lot when I was younger. Was like I remember my grandma talking about purgatory, and I'm like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Well, it's like if you're not good enough to go to heaven, or if the souls of unbaptized babies, or fucking whatever explanation she gave." But basically, she was talking about purgatory, and I was like, "I've never heard of that before." And she was like, yeah, I don't know, it's just kind of this thing. And I'm like, whoa, are you telling me there's like this whole other plane of existence that they're not teaching us about? And she goes, I don't know, ask your teacher. So I go into school the next day, and I'm
Okay.
like, so what's the deal with purgatory? And they're like, my teacher's like, what are you talking about? It's not on the test. And I'm like, no, but like, I was talking to my grandma last night, and she said that there's this place called purgatory that's not necessarily heaven, it's not necessarily hell, but it's this place that you go in between while you're waiting for the end of times for Jesus to come back and forgive everybody for your sins or judge you. And the teacher was like, yeah, that's like from like the 50s. We don't teach that anymore.
Right.
I'm like, what do you mean you don't teach it anymore? Jesus, is this part of the fucking equation here or not? And the
Right.
teacher was just like, I don't know. Like, I'm a fucking fourth grade teacher in a private school. Like, I don't get paid shit. I don't fucking care. But that was it. Like, something that was taught in school for generations and generations just kind of lost vogue, like in the 60s and 70s. The Pope made some kind of fucking decree and they stopped teaching it. They stopped doing masses in Latin, and then and they took purgatory off the board. And like, I think once you see stuff like that happen, you realize, dude, everybody's just fucking, all of this stuff is just kind of being thrown together, you
Yeah.
know?
It yeah, it really is, which is why I don't personally believe that it has a place in science. Because it in and of itself doesn't really make much sense, right? And I don't think that it I hate that it's been turned into this big debate across the cryptid community, because it just doesn't it doesn't help, guys. It really doesn't. Like, I understand we're talking about things that have been proven to exist, but like, there is actual evidence out there. Like, there is actual scientific evidence of these things existing. I wouldn't be chasing it so badly if I didn't believe that there was. And they're not Nephilim. Jesus Christ, they're just not. They weren't even described as being animal-like at all. They were just big redheaded humans, basically. And it's just, I'm so frustrated with it. So I mean, I'm probably not gonna. I'm not gonna. I thought about doing a whole episode on just the Nephilim.
I'd be down for that.
I don't think I want to do all that.
Well,
To be
I think
honest with you.
you'll rub people the wrong way. I certainly don't give a shit, but like it sounds that I was very surprised when you were kind of giving me the background as to where these two things intersect, because
Yeah,
I never would have thought that this was something that had anything to do with Bigfoot and shit. But like the fact that it's very interesting that these two stories intersect at all. But I think that you talk about science, and like I don't know if listen, I don't think, as much fun as I had at the Ark Encounter, I don't think that that should take the place of an earth science class.
sure.
You know what I mean? I think that it works good in addition to, right? I think that you can read more than one book. or listen to more than one theory. I think anybody that only wants to hear one type of theory that just so happens to be the one that they already agree with, that they're not much of an intellectual. The only way we can get smarter as far as any topic goes is to listen to what everybody has to say. You never know when you're going to find something that's going to spark the imagination or take your investigation in a new direction, right? There is value in listening to what other people have to say. I don't think deplatforming anybody about anything is a good idea, right? But I think that you have to also hold things within context as well. And as much as I don't like, as someone that is a father to children myself, I don't want this to be the only view that my children have any more than
Sure.
I want a secular view to be the only view that my children have. I think that you provide them with many different views from many different religions and many, and then you just talk about it and you kind of see where it goes from there. But I understand that that's not always the case with people. And trust me, some of the
Right.
fucking jokers that I was going through this thing with last week, I don't think they're nearly as open-minded and liberal as I am.
Sure. Sure.
And that's where I understand people get weird about this kind of stuff and they kind of treat it with like, oh, this is dangerous.
Well, and that's the thing is, I absolutely agree with what you're saying 100%. Always listen to everybody's views and, talk to people, talk to many different kinds of people and see why they think the way that they think. However, it is my job to ask you the hard questions.
Right.
And if you're going to get mad that I'm asking you the hard questions and you can't answer them, either just accept that you have a narrow-minded view and don't bring that shit to my table, or be prepared to change your fucking mind because I'm going to bring the shit up. And like I said, if it's hard and you can't answer it, it's not because I'm not listening to you. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Like I said, I'm more than happy to listen to you, but at some point in time, it's going to be my turn to talk.
Right.
And I'm smart, guys. I don't know if you knew this, but
yeah, I can vouch for that.
I'm pretty heckin' smart. So
and a natural redhead.
Yeah, well, just make sure that you bring a good argument to the table. Now, again, no, it's not about arguing. It's like that. I want people to change my mind. This is why I do what I do. I want things to change, and I want the world to be a magical, beautiful place of mystery and wonderment and whatnot. It's just that I think that to a degree those mysteries can be solved, and I think that we should. And so, but I want the impossible to happen. I really do. I really do. If there's proof of a flood out there, I would love to see it. If there's proof that Bigfoot's a Nephilim, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. I'd love for you to change my mind. I'm probably the best person that you can come to change someone's mind about any particular subject. It's just, again, it has to make sense. You have to make it make sense. And if it doesn't, then there's something wrong with the narrative that you're stuck on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, that was my soapbox for the week.
And you say that as Ryan Tremblay's girlfriend.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but somehow that always, we got to work that in before you espouse any
I know
kind
exactly what you meant by that.
Anything you say is to be taken seriously. We have to fucking just.
You're right. It doesn't until it's established that I'm Ryan Triplet's girlfriend. It doesn't matter.
Yes,
so you guys know.
Some crackpot on the internet.
That's all.
Before we give her the platform, hold on. Let's make sure that she deserved it. Okay.
I got my credibility card. It's all right.
Right. Jesus Christ.
It took me a minute too. I was like, what? What? Oh, I know why.
Because is that what this was about? Like, I mean, not to get too much into fucking that.
Well, kind of that group, yeah. Is very much into this whole Nephilim thing, and I'm just not into it. And I mean, it was kind of, I had a disagreement with another podcaster. Some of you might actually be over here because you heard me talk to this guy. And a lot of people will argue over like if like Bigfoot and Dogman are flesh and blood terrestrial creatures, or if there's something more.
If they're ethereal or corporeal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And, I think that personally, and I'll say that here and now on my own show, that while I do believe that there is a flesh and blood Bigfoot, right? I do believe that it is an actual animal and it's living out there. It might even be kind of human. They might even kind of be almost the people. They're a little intelligent. I'm pretty sure I think that I do believe that there is a dogman type creature. I think people hear dogman and they think half dog, half man, but really it's just a huge ass dog with bipedal capability. I think it's still an animal. Um, but there are people that tell weird stories, and maybe we'll talk about that one day. The Bigfoot UFO, you know, not coincidence, but phenomena. It's kind of a big thing. You know, maybe we'll get into that a little bit more. But there are like these weird supernatural elements to some of these sightings and some of these stories. I mean, the fact of the matter is that probably most of them are bullshit, but then there probably are some that are legit. However, I don't think those things are animals. Like I don't think that they're dogmen. I don't think they're Bigfoot. I think that what they are is probably ultra terrestrial beings presenting as Bigfoot because it's like takes your reality to the edge, right? It projects an image into your head as you're seeing it as a Bigfoot because it's so ridiculous, but it's not completely outside of the realm of possibility for it to exist. However, whatever the thing is that's presenting to you as that is outside of your realm of possibility. You can't comprehend it. So therefore, it presents as like a Bigfoot or a dogman or whatever the fuck it is you're saying. And, you know, a lot of people take issue with that, I guess, because they still insist on calling these things what they are. And I think that terminology is really important. As somebody that's polyamorous, you know, ask any one of us in the community, terms are very important. And, you know, same thing goes for anything. So that's basically what this was about. But, you know, again, I guess I have to have the backing support of another, of a man in the field in order to be credible. I don't know.
Right. Well,
I'm not going to say that for sure. I'll say, you know what, me and this other person have so far, we've been cool. We've been good. Definitely keeping an eye on the situation because it is hard. You know, I talk about it a lot. Being a woman in the field is hard. Not only do I have to prove these fringe sciences, right? I have to prove that to everybody. I also have to prove that I'm credible and I'm valid because I'm a woman, and I have to do the extra step to do it.
what's crazy to me about this whole thing is you got people arguing about something that there's no like it's all hypothetical anyway.
Right. We
Like
don't know exactly what they are.
right. So like you have your theory, I have my
Right.
theory.
Sure.
But because our theories contradict, I don't think that means that we necessarily have to be at odds with each other
Right.
because the vast majority of people out there don't have theories about this shit at all because they don't give a fuck.
Right.
So like I think you know, it's one of those things where like you go to a punk rock show and like the dude in the Bad Brain shirt is thumbing his nose at the kid in the Blink 182 t-shirt.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I guess, you know, someone's more hardcore than someone else, but at the end of the day, we're all at the fucking punk show. Like, can't we be cool?
Right.
But you can't because tribalism exists in
yes.
any level of human interaction. It's just something that we inherently do to fuck things up. And some people blame the Tower of Babel for that, but that's next week's episode. So.
Well, and so the best way that I had put it was actually Ryan had made a post on Facebook recently asking about if people considered skinwalkers a cryptid. And but you know, what did they also think about the pale humanoids, right? And so these are two different creatures kind of. So I put my 2 cents in there. I said, well, you know what, technically skinwalkers are esoteric because it's a specific group of people that believes in this thing, and they're not even animals, they're people that shapeshift. And
yeah, it's a Native American mythology thing.
Right. So it's esoteric. I said, now, in the case of pale humanoids, I believe that actually some people see them and they think that they are skinwalkers, and they're wrong, but they think that they're skinwalkers. And then so that's where that gets mixed up. But the pale humanoids, are they cryptids? Well, we don't really fucking know what they are. We really don't. They could be cryptids. They could be aliens. They could
Nobody knows what any of this shit is.
We don't know.
Like,
right.
That's what's so fucking nuts to me is that nobody knows what any of this shit is.
Right.
And like, which
so
is fine.
Gatekeeping cryptids, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Are we really gonna do that?
The fact that there's people trying to draw these fucking lines in the sand,
yeah,
about any of this shit is like fucking insane to me. And I'm the guy that went to the Ark Encounter and had a good time. Like, you know, I thought this was all about having an open mind and entertaining as many different possibilities as you know. Remember when when the people that were into this shit used to be just fucking stoners? Like, I think we need to go back to that.
Or they used to just be excited to learn that there's another person that believes in the same shit that even believe that these things exist. Like, that was all you needed. And you just sit and you talk about your own theories back and forth. Like, there was no, well, you're wrong. It was just, oh my God, there's another fucking person that's actually willing to listen to me go on and on about fucking Bigfoot or whatever.
They're 21st century urban ghost stories that we tell around the campfire, and the campfire is now the internet. Yeah. Right? It's a bunch of people in the middle of the night saying, hey, did you ever hear the story about this one? Do you ever hear this? Now, I believe that a lot of these are I'm not saying that I think that these are all just fucking ghost stories and like bullshit that you make up to spook yourself. I think a lot of this stuff really happens, and a lot of this stuff is based in fact. But it's also so hard to prove and so intangible that
Right.
like to get really to be defiantly like I don't know. When people get mad at each other about this shit, it just feels very weird to me. It feels
Yeah.
very weird to me. I don't know. I can't articulate it right now, but
No, it is very weird, and I'm just for now I'm gonna distance myself from people that have that much of a closed mind. Like, first of all, if your mind's that closed off, you're never going to side with me and my theories anyway.
well,
So, because they're pretty fucking out there.
and I thought the whole point of all this was to have an open fucking mind in the first place.
Well, it should be, but then you get people that are, the problem is they get into this and then they start getting some type of clout. They get a following, and it's the popularity that kind of ruins it because
But,
people keep coming to listen to their theories. So
but
therefore, when they
you
start
can't.
building an army, they think that they're right.
But dude, you can't prove your theory any more than the other person can prove theirs.
Right. And so it's absolutely silly. I'm done with the infighting that's been going on. That's what I've just simply decided to do. I'll tell you, I posted that picture the other day, July 5th of the Saramancy photo of Champ. Okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of talking about it. What do you guys think it is? What do you think it is? I was so disappointed in the amount of people that came on there and said it was a whale penis. Like, it sounds so silly because like the first time it was said, it was funny, right? But then like eventually, like as kind of the post went on, it got sadder and sadder, and it's like, guys, it's not like like Champlain it's a whales don't live in freshwater. It just got so sad because then there were people that like actually weren't just like joking about it. They just had seen this idea on the internet somewhere and they ran with it and they decided that's what it was. And it's like, wait a minute. People are actually fucking serious about this. They actually think that lake monsters are whale penises. And it's like, that's not. So it made me very flustered because it made me realize that even though like maybe the first comment I was like, well, it can't be a whale penis because whales can't possibly live in Lake Champlain. Those people, the other people that followed didn't read at all. You know what I mean? They don't want to learn is what it is. Like, people subscribe to these ideas and then they get stuck on them and then they refuse. And I'm just like, okay, I don't have the energy to bring those people over to the other side of the fence and want to learn. You have to make them want to learn. I guess that's not really what my goal is of the whole thing anymore. But gosh, it's just crazy. The amount of negativity in the community is just bad. And I'm just going to leave it at that. How about that?
Well,
I'll quit talking.
for some people, outrage is intoxicating. And
Yes.
to get upset about anything and people, like I said, people like tribalism. They like to know that I'm on this side and you're on that side. And I know that if I'm on this side, then I'm on this side with these people. And these people are my friends now because we're all on this side. And if that means
Right.
that you're my enemy because you're on that side, well, so fucking be it, because God damn it, I'm on this side.
Right.
And yeah, it's ridiculous. And there's people that do it. Like I said, it's music. It's everything. People just find reasons to fucking divide themselves.
Which is why I'm just gonna ignore it, because you're right. It is everything. It's in every group, and it's even in the fucking cryptid, paranormal, and ufology community, guys.
I guess what's blowing my mind is peeking behind the curtain and seeing what the fuck is going on and being like, oh
Yeah.
my god,
Yeah. It's crazy. So I'm done with it. But I feel like this has kind of settled my views on the Nephilim theory. So from now on, I will direct people to this episode. And
I still would like to do a deeper dive on them at some point. I guess let's wait for something to happen to kind of make this.
well,
topic
we might talk about like the giant of Kandahar, or something like that. And maybe we'll talk about giants and stuff and do a little bit. I mean, maybe we'll just talk about giants one day.
Sure.
I'd much rather talk about that than Nephilim. I mean, some people think that that's what they are. I'll entertain that idea for a minute.
Well, I always heard Nephilim in terms of that's like what aliens were supposed to be. Like the Greys were like that aliens were angels or something spiritual that was trapped here or trafficking through here, either positively or negatively. There's a lot of people that think that aliens have a demonic edge to them or something, especially because if you look at some abduction scenarios, especially when they're tied into sleep paralysis, that it seems like when people encounter, like, report seeing like shadow people in the rooms and stuff like that, or they think that there's a demonic presence in the room that's kind of like trying to prey on them, and they're able to break from it. And I've gone and I've said multiple times in multiple shows, I suffer from sleep paralysis. Not so much anymore, but when I was definitely when I was younger, and I know what that's like. And it is very creepy and you not very rational, and you're not in the right mind anyway when it hits you. So who knows? You kind of fucking don't know what the fuck is happening. And a demonic explanation makes total sense in that context, or an alien one, either one. You know,
I think maybe we should just do a whole episode titled "Is It Demons?" and we just kind of talk about the different things that people think could be demonic and why.
Could I bring up a couple ex-girlfriends?
Sure. Sure. Hey, you know what? That's your funeral, not mine. So by all means,
they don't listen to this. They don't listen to this shit.
I don't know. You know, we'll figure something out, I'm sure. But you know, as far as the flood and whatnot goes, I think we're pretty settled on that, guys. I don't know. You got anything else to mention about this Noah's Ark situation?
Let me check my show notes real quick. No, but yeah. Oh, so hold on. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Is there anything you want to plug real quick while I'm looking at this?
Oh, yeah, actually, I do. My very good friend Nubsy. Pat, you probably don't know Nubs. I don't know why, but my friend Nubs runs a YouTube channel called Adventures with Nubs, and sometimes I'm on there on the live panel talking about cryptids and stuff. But Nubs does a lot of paranormal, like urban exploration and stuff like that. He has a couple of very specific cases, like locations and stuff he's been working for a long time. Nubs is just short of 1,000 followers, and if you guys could please go follow his YouTube channel, again, that's Adventures with Nubs. That would be great. But I think that's really all I have to plug for now.
Do we have any Clubhouse things coming up?
No, not yet. Nothing planned this week.
No, I didn't have anything. There was a book of Noah, which is one of those we talked about Apocrypha, Bible books that were cut out. And the book of Noah kind of ties in with the book of Enoch, which makes sense, you know, because of the Nephilim and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty much done with this. But the Ark Encounter, I gotta say though, like, is whether or not if you find yourself in the position to check this thing out because it is enormous, and it's a good people watching experience too.
Yeah.
You know, so
I want to go. I'm going to go check it out. Maybe we'll go together.
Yeah. Like I said, maybe Labor Day. I think we're
take a little video. Yeah, we can plan it out. We can figure it out. Find it, you know, make it work somehow and do it. But yeah, I would definitely be down to go. Well, okay. Well, I guess that's it for this episode, guys. We'll see you back here next Wednesday.